Good. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for your confirmation. This is Professor Xiaoling Zhang from City University of Hong Kong, POL. I'll be teach you all through this POL5702. And before we start, normally we will try to wait for more students to join the session, but I think so far there might be a lot more students coming in while on discussion. So in this, contact, we can just start. And see whether you can see my slides. Wait a second. I'm going to share with you of the slides. Can you see the screen? Yes. Let me open my video to say hello to you. Yes. Okay. The lecture will cover, firstly, the main introduction of economics and finance. We will introduce the fundamental principles of economics. We would introduce the economics as kind of a major discipline in terms of how we will look at the society in a very efficient and effective way. So we would try to share with you after this lecture about the tutorials and assignments. So without any further delay, I would like to try to give you the first chapter. What is economics? Well, economy starts from the day that from the Greek, that usually we would say economy comes from a Greek word for, one who manages a household. So this is what we say about economy. So this is firstly, the unit is family as a unit. So if you try to think about there are multiple decisions in one family, for example, the income of family as a unit would be around 1,000, 2,000, for example, okay, or 10,000. And the next agenda for a family would how to spend this 20,000. Normally, we would try to divide this into a cake. That cake is divided into several smaller amounts of that. Okay, for example, how is spending on the electricity fees, utility fees, and the other fees, so on and so forth. And there might be some other, terms of division, like the you see, you're going to buy food. Okay, and the housing, pay the housing installment. This is also the other spending in terms of a cake. Okay, this is how we look at economy. And what is economics? If we look at a householder again, it means a household and economy would face many decisions. First question is who will work? Second one is what goods and how many of them should be produced? What resources should be used in production? And at what price should the goods be sold? So this is what we look at economics. Well, when we try to calculate what is expenditures, what are the, so then we would make this a very interesting kind of decision. So in your life, there are many different, or we say multiple decisions, right? So one of the decision would be like resources spending and resources coming and come out, so on and so forth. So, well, if we try to look at and measure economics, it's deeply rooted in two basic ideas, okay? So I try to get students in more in the meantime. The first one is scarcity of resources. Like we use natural resources, for example. And for example, the time. And then the rationality of people. Like Europe would say people are selfish. So this is second point. The third one is because the resources are scarce, okay, scarcity. And people need to make rational decisions because we are all want to have more, okay? We all want to have more, resources. If you look at, there's an interesting story, the tragedy of commons, So people always want to get even one more unit of that resources. So this would be a constraint maximization. So in this term, economics is, in terms of this, is considered as a study on how many people would make decisions and how people would interact with each other, the forces and the trends that would affect the economy as a whole. So this is how we would look at this kind of resources with decisions and how the forces would affect this kind of economy as a whole. So under of this, we would say the condition of scarcity. Our resources, first and foremost, are limited. But in fact, our desire for goods and services is not, right? So when we look at this production costs, so we would say the production costs are normally considered as higher than the second tier because the resources in question is designed for other purpose as well. So when we say resources is scarce, if it has more than one valuable use, more than one valuable use. So this is what we said, condition of scarcity. I just give you example. When we say why we have the carbon, like we say the exploration of the carbon emissions. So once the resources are limited, we would make a trade-off between how much we will spend on water, resources, on sea, and on also the other kind of resources, nature resources. So when we say every time we would spend one more cost of the unit to try to exploit the resources, because it is desired also for the others. Once our family would spend some resources on unit A, and the other family, like family B, would try to get more. Like they drive a car or they take a walk to go to their work, their job unit. It depends, okay, it's different. So this is how we would spend all the resources other than this. Because when two more or even three units want to compete for one unit of resources, for example, the car parking space, do we have the sharing economy and things like that? We all need such kind of competition for resources, etc., etc. So this is, we said, condition of scarcity. In that case, to choose means to refuse. You understand what I mean? The moment you decided to attend today's lecture means the decision you're going to refuse or reject the decision to going outside, right? To going outside means to have some other recreational time. So this is your option, which means the moment you make up this option or the decision is the moment you refuse or reject the other decision. Okay, this means choose or not choose. Because we are constantly faced with such kind of scarcity, we must make choices and make up a lot of decisions. So every time we choose one thing, like material or not, we refuse something else. We refuse something else. That's what we say. In the meantime, we got, pick up one, because the resources as a common goal, it is scarce, right? If you choose A and you got give up B. So this is what we say, choose option A and B for gone. So in our daily life, we have been constantly make such kind of trade-offs in our daily decisions. For example, if you plan to watch TV together with your family members at this time, and you have to really reject the time to read, books, or you're going to give up the time or the opportunity to hang out outside with parties. Okay, a lot of people with parties. But, well, we do have the other concern. What if someone else buys your lunch? It is merely a shifting of costs, okay? It's not an elimination. So, and this is really free. As we said, there is an old saying, there is never a free lunch, okay? So you got to give up something that is your cost to obtain or even to gain something else. Okay, this is what we say to get A, but you have to give up B. Is this really free? Okay, the free is at the cost of something, but it is not elimination, of course. So this is chapter 1. Chapter 2 is finance. In the next chapter, we have another guest, another lecturer, Dr. Ju, will talking about what is finance. So we would now again talk about more about these issues, but we would really have a very brief and starting issues is this a branch of economics or not? Is this a branch of economics or not? Finance is a study on how an individual or an organization raises, allocates, and uses monetary resources over the time. So this is finance. Well, third one, it means it's distinct from economics in that it would address not only how resources are allocated, but also under what terms and through what channels it will be, spent out. You know what I mean? So suppose you have a bundle of monetary resources over one years. How, as an individual or a bank, this is an organization, right, would try to collect the money and use these financial resources over a period of time. So this is how you try to spend it, and it's through what kind of channels. The first channel would be investment, like risk and return. Risk and return. Sorry. The second one would be a capital budgeting and planning, like how to raise up a fund. So this is capital issues. The third one is management and control. Suppose like you're running a capitalization fund company. So how would you really accumulate such kind of investment? And how would you budget your capital and plan the capital, budgeting? And then the third one is how would you manage your capital and control the risks? So these are the different way, but it's long time. It's long time. So we could not try to make this a kind of a matter of economics, but also how would manage such kind of monetary resources. So that needs a lot of judgment and analyze predictable, modeling, uncertainties, etc., etc. So these are all the different branch of economics, etc. So there are a lot of really real versus financial assets. Like firstly, the real assets are tangible things that is owned by persons and businesses. For example, first, residential structures and property. Secondly, there are a lot of major airlines and automobiles, and office towers, factories, mines, and other real tangible, physically obvious things or products or equipment, etc. And financial assets are what one of the individuals would have lent to another. So this is financial assets, which would include the consumer credit, the loans, and the mortgages, etc. mortgages. Let me try to get this into. So we will introduce the loans, credits, mortgages in the other chapters later on, I think, financial issues. But in terms of assets and liabilities of households in 2005, we can see that this is the classifications of the assets, real assets, liabilities, so and financial assets, etc. So the total assets will be 5671. So if we really making to calculate assets, real assets, and the total assets financially, and the liability right hand side would be how much like consumer credits you have, loans you have, how much mortgages you have. So in calculation, total liability would be 979. So this was the number of 2005. Well, if we looking at the financial system as overview, I want to give you a brief introduction in this way. Suppose a household is a primary provider of funds to business and government. All households must accumulate financial resources throughout their working lifetimes to have enough savings, such as the expansion, the pension, to live on in their retirement years. And the second point is financial intermediaries transform the nature of the securities that they issue and invest in. Like the investment would be in banks, trust companies, credit unions, insurance firms, and mutual funds, etc. So these are all the different financial intermediaries. There are a lot of market intermediaries who simply help make markets work, like investment dealer and brokers, etc. So these are the three classified, the classified, financial products in terms of system. And if we look at the financial system, and we would say that the government, the business sectors, and non-resident sectors. And we have financial intermediaries like market intermediaries. So this one would make the financial intermediaries or market intermediaries a bit of in the medium sized. And the other end is households. So left hand side, right hand side, this is like a bridge. If you look at this like a financial bridge in the banking, in some systems that you will see. So if we look at these channels of intermediation, the funds can be channeled from the saver to borrower in three different ways or channels. The first one is direct intermediation, which means a direct transfer from the saver to borrower. That is a non-market transaction. The second one is direct interactions, intermediations, that is market-based transaction, usually through a market intermediary such as broker. And we will see some other indirect claims through a financial intermediaries, where the financial intermediary such as a bank offers deposit-taking services and ultimately lends those deposits out as mortgages or loans. So that include direct and indirect. So this is how the funds will be channeled. So there are many different ways that you can easily find. If you go to a bank, this is you just a direct transfer from one to B, right? And then the market-based transactions through the market intermediations. So this is a forms. So if we look at intermediation for channels, we can find that from lenders to borrowers, we have direct claims and indirect claims. So from the direct claims, that is non-market transaction to the market intermediaries. And then finally, the last end is indirect claim, that is financial intermediaries. Financial intermediaries, right? So this from the lenders to borrowers. But how it flows is quite easy, right? The money goes from A to B and then to C. So this is the way how the flooding or how the capital would run through different ports, through different ports. So that's why we look at the financial system in terms of this. Banks and other deposit-taking institutions and insurance companies as second sector, pension funds and mutual funds. So these are the 4 different intermediaries as the representative units. Okay, insurance. While into the markets, there are 2: primary market, secondary market. So this is the markets. For one thing, the markets that involve the issue of the new securities by the borrowers in return for cash from the investors. That is, capital formation usually occurs. And for the secondary market, we would say the markets that involve buyers and sellers of existing securities. So the funds will usually flow from buyer to seller, and the seller would become the new owner of the security. So at this moment, there is no capital formation would occur. So this is a second typical market. So well, some student will ask me, hey, Dr. Zhang, what do you think about the stock market? The stock market. And from what point do you think the stock market will be gaining and some, profits? And for this course, what we are going to learn about, point 1, housing economics. Housing economics, which means we will look at how the demand for housing by the household would change and how the developers would respond to the change in demand. Just give you another a very simple example. That is when the developers try to build up a house that would respond to their home, kind of supply and demand. They will look at how many people in this neighborhood would have such strong demand to purchase their own homes. But after a period of time like COVID-19, for example, the demand generated by the housing has declining, right? That declining is a change. And people would try to, give up a lot of the other demands, and there is alternative of housing. So this is one possible changes in demand. And for another example, once the whole society will give up for baby, more and more babies. So they give up for giving birth to babies. So in this occasion, that the housing needs will become less. And how the market would replace obsolete housing over the period of time. So that is one, the market replacement. And why the government would intervene in the market housing, in the housing market. So this is government intervention. There is also interesting thing that we would try to understand is where market fail, the government intervene. So between the market and government intervention, this is how that you really have. And what are the effects of government's interventions? So this is also the other effects of government behaviors in terms of intervention, So this is housing economics. The second chapter in housing finance So we will look at how the home purchasers would value housing, and the housing subsidies would be offered by the government, and how the household would finance the home purchaser of the purchase. And last but not least is international trend of housing finance. So these are the two sectors of housing, economics and finance. Sorry, the structure I forgot to change. I will change this later because this is old. I forgot to eliminate. What is the 10 principles of the economics? We start from the 10 principle of economics here. Like the first golden rule is people would face a lot of trade-offs. As I said just now, in your moment, there are so many decisions would let you face up with different trade-off. Once you decide to go on to, for example, to in kind of pursue or study another PhD, and you have to give up your job. Okay, once you decided to have this master course or degree, and on the other hand, you have to give up another decision. For example, the decision of what? Of decision of going to the bank, because that's your trade-off. And for another, interesting example, once you decided to go to, work, for example, today, and you have to give up your opportunity to watch movie and to stay with your family, to work or not work, we say in Shakespeare, to be or not to be. So this is trade-offs, right? That's everyday life decisions we have to meet up with. So this is the first, chapter. Well, from this, there should have some interesting interrelated concepts. To get one thing, we're going to give up another thing. Suppose we have gums and butter. If you want to get the gums, and you have to give up the butter. If you want to get your food, and you have to give up the clothing. And if you want to spend more time in yoga, for example, the leisure times, you have to give up your work, the time of work, okay? And you're going to make up a lot of decisions that requires trade-off, one go against another. So this is a decision making. And for most of occasions, people would face up a lot of trade-offs. So what try to set up the limitations for the budget constraint? Because the budget constraint will show the combination of two goods that you may offer that can be affordable or you can afford to purchase at the maximum most. So this is your budget. Suppose a family, okay, maximum 20,000 for the whole family you would gain as an income. Then you have to spend half of them to pay the housing mortgages, like 10,000. And you get another 10,000 to have a budget trend. So suppose this is your lines of budget constraint. The budget constraint, another 10,000, right? So in that case, what you're going to try to really look at and the measurement of that curve is how you would spend the quantity or the quality. Like if you spend good A for cost of $200 and the income or quantity of goods for B, that would be cost 100, cost cost 100. So this is a budget. So that is how we look at a budget constraint. Would show the combinations of two goods that you can afford to buy. So anytime of our students who would have questions, please raise up your hands, let me know. So, but I guess when you finish your, a university degree at bachelor, you might have have understood these, issues between the quantity and quality. So this is a budget constraint that maximally you would try to afford to purchase. This is a budget constraint. So this is how totally you would spend as the one that you would afford purchase max, from this a maximum. And for if you move up the budget from 1,000 to 1,200, and then you would make another budget that is between 6 and 12. So this is another budgeting constraint. Another interesting, rules for this trade-offs is indifference curve. It definitely shows the bundles of consumption that would make an individual equally happy. So this is indifference curve. So, well, as a quantity of good A and quantity of good B. So aiming point in this one, that means it's indifferent. That is indifference curve. It does show the bundles of consumption that will make an individual equally happy at X and Y, same level of the curves. These areas equals to these areas, right? 1, 5, right? So that is how we look at the bundles of making each point. Indifference means there's no difference between A and B. Oh, I see one student's right. Wang Xiangyu, do you have a question? What is your question, Xiangyu? Oh no, okay, no question, right? You may forgot this. Okay, that's okay. So maybe you can leave some Q&A in the end if you do have some questions. Okay, that's indifference curve. But once we move up between the indifference curve 1 to upscaling to indifference curve 2, right? This is how from Y to Z, okay, the different point. And that means that indifference curve between the same level of the quantity of G would make better, or that the indifference curve will be even higher, And then at which point should the individual would consume in order to maximize his or her utility? Well, at point A, right? And this is another, is point B, to maximize between A and B individually. So when we look at how, the individual A and B would try to change between these trade-offs quantities, you will look at which point will make individual feel mostly satisfied, right? And how to make sure his or her utility is maximum. So this is what we said, that's trade-off. That is like a golden, golden point. So when we look at this, we will try to make, the different curve is, this is indifference curve, that is marginal lines at this a straight line, that is a maximum point for utilities, right? So this is mathematically a model effective, mathematically effective. Okay, so this is how we look at this. And in housing economics, one of the most common trade-offs is efficiency versus equity. So efficiency means the society will get the most that it can have from its scarce resources. This is efficiency. So, which means the whole society would get the most that can have from its scarce resources. The equity means the benefits of those resources would be distributed fairly among the members of the society. So equity means how the resources, even they're scarce, even they're limited, and how we spend those resources equally, right? Equally. And even efficiency means the society will get the maximum that it can to have its scarce resources. So this is the most common trade-offs between efficiency versus equity. And efficiency is really about how to produce a pizza, okay, by maximize the use of the limited ingredients. And equity is about how to divide and share the pizza. So this is how efficiency means produce. So make the pie of pizza larger. You know, suppose this, when we're talking about efficiency means before the pizza is like this, very small, and then it will be enlarged maximum to make it larger like this. So this produce and production more. But equity means how can we divide and share the pizza equally? Share the pizza equally. So this is between efficiency and equity. Okay, so that the thing we would try to make it there. Like we put different, you know, like the small hats into different pizza. That means how we should spend them equally and equity. The second golden rule of economics fundamentals is the cost of something is what you give up to get it. This is a cost. See? So, well, the cost of something is what you give up to get it. Well, we are facing a lot of decisions. And such kind of decisions really require comparing costs and benefits of alternatives. Whether to go to college or to go to work, this is a decision, okay? Decision 1. 2, whether to study or go out on the gate. So the second one. Third one is whether to go to class or sleep in class. This is another decision. So all of this is trying to compare different costs and benefits in terms of alternatives. Okay, go to college or go to work. To go to study or go out on a date. Okay, so this is different. But every time when you hang up and try to make up decision and you would lost something. What is this something? Something means your opportunities. And once you decide to go to college or to study a PhD, the foregone opportunity is to work. Okay? Once you decide to study, but you may lose a good friend or the girlfriend or boyfriend. So this is foregone in terms of opportunity foregone. You cannot get them back because the time is limited as resources. Okay, and whether you go to class, this is one decision. But foregone is opportunity cost is to sleep while you lost the opportunity to have more leisure time or even go to movies, right? So this is your opportunity cost. And well, this is a story, very classical means when we look at the opportunity cost, so we have a twin, okay? Suppose Tom and Jerry, they graduate with bachelor's degrees and receive the same job offer. Tom passes up the job offer to pursue a master's degree, while Jerry takes up the job offer and begins working. So after 2 years, Tom graduates and begins working. And by this time, Jerry has been promoted to a position that is comparable to Tom's starting position. And Jerry's salary has increased to an amount that is comparable to Tom's starting salary. And this is like 2 years ago, and it happens like that. So when we refer to the cost of something is what you give up to get it. So this is a cost of something. Tom studied in university. His expenditure is 200,000, okay? And return after 10 years is 1,200,000, okay? But his net benefit is 1,000, okay? Actually, it's like 10 kind of expenditure being returned and net benefit is deducted in, okay? But if suppose he decided to start a career now, okay, he spent zero money. He returned 500,000, but 10 years after that, studying university comparing with starting career now, the net benefit is much larger, is doubled than starting career now because he got the degree. I guess that's the reason is opportunity cost, but in the meantime, you gain up the time value of studying in the university, the degree, okay? So your cost of studying in university is the net benefit of studying career now forgone. That is 500,000, okay? So this is a cost of studying in university. That kind of opportunity cost is forgone. You cannot find it back, okay? So this is what exactly explained. The cost of something is what you give up to get it. Okay, you understand, right? So this one is quite interesting metaphor. And your cost of studying career now means the net benefit of studying university no forgone. That is 1,000. We should say 100. Okay, 1 billion, 10 billion, 10 million. My calculation in terms of this is not very good. So, well, after we studied the second point, to get something, you got to forgone and something. The third principle is rational people would think at the margin. So margin is a very interesting economic rules. So I want to have a very brief break before we try to study, in the second chapters. So I see you after 10 minutes, if that's okay with you. Okay, let's start with the second half of the lecture today. Let me try to share the screen once again. So this is a typical issues when we say the rational people will think at the margin. Rational people think at the margin. Well, you understand what do we mean by margin, right? So the rational people would always look at and think about what is the most, maximum profit point of any curves, like the benefit of cost, or the cost of benefit, etc. So, well, this is how we look at, either which goods or which not products will make the maximum profitable, benefits. Suppose the ON point is the most profitable point, and the marginal cost is like this, and this is a marginal benefit. According to this, when we calculate which is the maximum cost or most profitable cost or beneficial point of the marginal level, you will look at how it will be put into the marginal. So that is what we say the most, any more unit of that go beyond this point will be even more profitable, or any more even larger, that is marginal cost. I'll give you another example. When you try to make a decision when you feel hungry, you buy one piece of bread and you want to buy another piece of bread. So this is the marginal cost of your bread, right? So once, every time you consume another unit of the bread, you make it more, you feel that is the most profitable point and the most satisfied point. But once you really, had enough piece of bread, you won't be giving to another piece of bread. And that is the marginal cost or marginal point of eating or having or testing that kind of flavor of bread. So that is think or irrational or rational decision of the margin. Right? So this is quite interesting metaphors when we look at or think about the marginal cost. Okay, and another issues is between the, well, this is how we look at the different point of money that you would spend between 3,000, 5,000 or marginal cost, even between 1 to N, it goes. Every one more unit of that will generate of this. So this is one particular point when you try to make, that kind of spanning of this. Okay, and then another kind of interesting, metaphor of this, if we look at this, is total net benefit. Total net benefit. Like the more, building stories you want to try to spend, and the more the number of total net benefit cost will become generating. So in the sum line between ON, so this is the total net benefit, the total net benefit. Okay, between the ON and the net benefit is a maximum point of that net benefit. We can use diamond, a water diamond as another example, water versus diamond, right? Suppose one individual, he or she would like or he already is trying to spending 63 units of water, and which is only deriving 80 units of utility for the last unit of water. So in the meantime, the person is consuming just 12 units of diamonds and deriving 235 units from the 12th diamond. So this is how, the consuming and the utility cost of water and diamonds. And so the fourth principle is people would respect incentives. We understand there always have a lot of marginal changes in the cost or benefits that would motivate people to respond. So the decision that you made to choose one alternative over another occurs when that alternative's net benefit is greater. So this is what we look at marginal changes. And the central role of incentives in determining this kind of behavior is much more important than public administrators who design the public policy. So this is the in fundamental and focal role of incentives. So, well, when we try to understand what are the incentives are the costs and benefits of making specific decisions. And changing decisions and changing incentives would alter people's behaviors. So incentives would operate on all levels, that is personnel, family level, industry, and societal levels. So this is decisions that is more, try to make. For example, we have gasoline price, right? So this gasoline prices, when the price of gas rises, do you change your behavior? And do you really, change your behavior? So what is the difference between the short run changes and long run changes in their behavior, right? So this is gasoline prices. We have a lot of volunteerism. For those incentives don't matter, only to those people that is the mostly greedy and selfish. Don't matter, okay? So, and what kind of fundamental incentives do volunteers have if it is not monetary, economic, ethical, or even the other kind of incentives? And the third point is, why do you volunteer? Why do you volunteer? So these are the three incentives. So between the seat belts, while the incentive is to save your life. So my question is, does wearing the seat belt will create any incentives? So why do people getting more accidents now that cars are safer? Okay. The question is because people generally, or we say mainly motivated by driving safely. So in this occasion is what we're gonna question ourselves is, in that kind of decisions, how would people interact? How people would interact? So we are in our deadline, there are a lot of trade that can make everyone better. Everyone better. Please turn into silent mode. So the trade would allow people to specialize in what they do their best, like rabbit hunting versus fishing. This is one behavior of trade-off. If you are good at fishing, and you will fully be devoted in fishing, okay? And excess of fish would be used to exchange for rabbits with hunters. And people would gain from their abilities to trade with one another. Okay, so this is what they gain from their abilities. The markets are usually a good way to organize their economic activity. And so if you look at, but this one we will look at again in the later chapters about circular flow model. We would try to make a kind of case studies. We try to think about between the household, the left-hand side, right-hand side, the firms. Every individual units in terms of family, there are lots of households that will buy and consume goods and services, and that would sell and own the different labor as households. So there was spending. So once they spend, the markets for goods and services. So the firms would sell and household would buy. Okay. So, and in this case, the spending making markets have more circulation of economic activities or social services, etc. Someone will offer service like you say, the massage is kind of services, right? It's not good. The mobile phone is kind of products of goods. And they would gain the revenue for what? For firms. For the firms, they would really produce and sell goods and sell services, and they would hire and use their labor. So this is between the households and firms. Between firms and households, well, you would say once the firms produce and sell goods and services, hire and use labor, they would pay the wages and rent and profits for the markets with labor. So, and then we gain the income from each of the individual in the markets. They would lend and sell their income and to buy consume goods and services. So that each of the individuals a laborer that would gain their income. So this is circular flow model. Between the firms and households, this is circular models. And in between, the household would sell their labor to make the markets full of circulation of labor. And for the circulation markets of labor, that will give impulse for production with firms. The firms pay the wages to the markets through the income form to the households. So each of us as individuals, we will gain our income from paying wages, rent, and profit. So this is circular flow model, okay? This is the whole cycle of circular flow model for this. This is C. So I would like to use, the Starbucks as an interesting example to show you how would this happen. The Starbucks circular flow story. Well, you would say like this. Well, when we look at how it make, the story making the issues of that we would say, well, there are a lot of, floods of the capitals. Well, if we give, for example, the coffee growers and manufacturers, this is exports from the plants, okay? And then go out to be sold to the rest of the whole world and imposed to this Starbucks. And then they will flow the workers' wages for working as growers to the households. And people will buy the Pike's press with a lot of different roast of this. And Pike's press roast will try to sell the coffee bought by consumers, etc. So with this flood of that would try to sell the roast to Starbucks. So this is a whole, cycle of flooding of the capital, growing or capital production. The production of coffee called the production of the coffee consumers, employment and growers. So this would say the Starbucks would pay the growers for the coffee supply and export their coffee to the rest of the world. And this is a Stolberg circular flow story. Okay, so I make this another circular story from the money can be sold. So this is one of the issues we try to make. Okay, and then another issue is the markets are usually a good way to organize economic activity. So in the market economy, the households would decide what to buy and what to work for. So the firm decide who to hire and what to produce in the market economy. When they decide what to buy and sell, the households and firms will look at, firstly, the prices of goods and services, and the price of labor, like the wages, how much wages they would pay, okay? And the prices will guide decision makers to reach the outcomes that tend to maximize the welfare of society as a whole. This is a 6. And the 7th rule is that governments can possibly sometimes improve their market outcomes. So we always said why we need government. Because when the market fails, the government could intervene to promote efficiency or equity. So this is the intervention between the market. Market failure occurs. When does it occur? It occurs when the market fails to allocate resources efficiently, right? So this is market failure. And it may be caused by the public goods, that goods be neither excludable nor rival, okay? This is public goods. The externality means the impact of one person or firm's actions on the well-being of the third party. So these externalities. A market power means the ability of a single person or firm to unduly influence market prices. So this is what we say the market power. Between the public goods, that is public, and the market power, private market, the externalities might happen. So these are the 3 different things for market failure. I give you some interesting examples for market good. For example, the air. So air is public good. The sea is public goods. So there is no rival between the public goods. So people cannot make it privately owned. Externalities would bring along the market failure because when people or decision from one firms on the well-being or the third party will bring along externalities. And private market power means there do exercise ability of a single person, a firm, to unduly influence their market price. And this is market power. So that is one failure. Well, once we look at all of those 7, I think the previous one, we will look at how the economy as a whole will work. How does it work? Microeconomics. It's different from what we say as the private economics. A country's standard of living would depend on its ability to produce goods and services. So this is what we look at. So the standard of living might be measured in different ways. Standard of living. So what are ways? 1 is by comparing the personal incomes. 2, by comparing the total market value of nation's production. And this kind of productivity is the amount of goods and services produced from each hour of a worker's times. And this higher productivity means higher standard of living. So this is one standard of productivity of living. The principle 9 is prices would always rise when the government prints too much money. So that is inflation, right? Inflation, you understand what I mean? When money becoming more supply than the really the people who really demands, that means the money does not cost the value that it originally should be valued. So that means the price would goes up when the government prints too much money. Okay, and then this kind of inflation is an increase in overall level of prices in the economy. It generally occurs when the growth in the quantity of money exceeds the growth in the availability of goods and services. That is how and when the inflation occurs. So first point is every good has a value. 2, the money has a value. So once the cash of notes has a value, and that is what it generally occurs. So in the past, we can exchange 5 chickens for 1 diamond, but now the number of chickens is double. So chicken's value drops. So we need to exchange 10 chickens for 1 diamond. That is inflation, right? Very easy to be comprehended. The value change. So that means that similar terms, there are 2, and coins cost about 5 multiplied by for exchanging with 1 diamond, and that means 10 pounds of this 2 cents will be exchanged for 1 diamond. Okay, so the money, they need more to get the same value of used to be. So this is inflation. But generally speaking, right, when we talking about this, inflation is an increase in overall level of prices in the economy. And it generally occurs when the growth in the quantity of money exceeds the growth in the availability of goods and services. So every good has a value, and the money as a cash note also has value. And this value is this, we say, have a changeable alternative change value of that. So that when the government creates large quantities of money, the value of money would generally be, say, the rules would be a false instantly. So that is how it have this inflation. And the process of price adjustment due to the change in money supply is very low. It's very low. The 10th rule is society will face a short-run trade-off between the inflation and unemployment. So this is the trade-off between inflation and unemployment. So that is the 10th rules of this. We always have such kind. In the short run, every increase in the money supply does not push up overall level prices immediately. So this is a short run kind. And the goods become even cheaper. So there are large quantities of goods that could be purchased. So there are 2 conditions. Point 1, more goods are demanded. So more goods to be purchased and produced. And there will be more people to be hired. More labor, okay, in the market, job market will reduce the unemployment rate. So with short run, the money supply does not push up the price immediately, but with a cheaper price of goods would making the unemployment rate will be reduced. And in the long run, the price levels increase and fewer goods are consumed, which means point 1, the fewer goods are demanded, and so fewer goods to be produced, and fewer people to be hired, increasing their employment and unemployment. Not, it should be that would increase the unemployment rate, which means there are more number of people do not have jobs. So we cannot really inject too much money in that, because this way is like we say in Chinese that we're saying in 政之可. Once you try to inject more into the monetary system, that it seems good in the short run, but not good, damaging in the future, in the long run. So that is the microeconomic decisions it should be made. So supply and demand rules. So you won't be unfamiliar with that because you have studied this, I assume, in bachelor. I think the law of supply really state that when other things become of being equal, the price of goods rises and quantity supplied of goods also rises. So the price of good A and quantity of goods A is supplied. And this is supply good curve. Okay, so when the price of goods rises and the quantity of supply of goods would also rises. So 水涨船高. Once water goes up, the world will become even floating highly. So that is the law of supply and demand. But of course, a lot of demand is in the other range, with the other things becoming equal and controlled, and the price of goods rises, quantity demands of goods falls. But that's easy to become hence, right? Just like when we buy the more people want to buy luxury bag, or the very famous branding of clothes. So the price of this, like like we say LV is rises, the demand of the goods would falls because there are not so many people would afford to buy and purchase such kind of famous and luxury bag. So it's the equilibrium terms. The market price is determined when the supply is equal to demand. So this is a point of equilibrium for the market price. So it's determined when supply is equal to demand. Another thing is surplus. So this is a surplus. And this means that whether more surplus was produced between supply and demand. The shortage means there are more demand than supply. So this is between the supply of demand. Well, I want to spend a few more minutes to talk on how to study housing economic finance and in the urban housing studies. Housing economics is not a difficult subject. Even you have to really know training in economics in certificate and in A levels. So there are two advice. Firstly, read theories and principles more and digest them. Think about applications. As I said, a lot of interesting metaphors, interesting examples for you to try to apply. So making the theory with a lot of applications is much more important. So when looking to someone, others' behaviors, try to ask why in the first place, rather than whether it's good or bad. Also, try your best to make use of common sense and think in logical manner. Well, I would like to stop here for this lecture today, and I want to spend more time for the division of labor for today's tutorials. So, but I want to leave a few questions for Q&A. So, any questions from the floor? You can, if you are not very, you can write down. Some students asked about, discussion. Some people want to transfer to TZ2 or TZ3. While you're talking about division, right? Any questions for the lectures, please? Because today we are going to do the division with the labor. Due to the COVID-19, we cannot go to the offline So what we can only have is online teaching for the tutorial session. So I wonder whether you have any questions for the division of Zoom. We can use this use time to try to raise up your concerns or your time and your the questions of division of the tutorial groups. Any questions? Some students asked whether we can have a group of 5, right? A group of 5. For group 5, it is not encouraged. Better to have no more than 4 poly. But if really we cannot really make a division in very average manner, and a group of 5 would be accommodated. Let's see how we can divide later, okay? Some students ask, I will like whether the lecture in the future would be online or would be changed back to hybrid mode. This is, thanks for the question, Ke-Xin, because for the majority of the session, this is controlled by university policy. The universities, because we have a large group of students, it's more than 120 students. So if we put it hybrid mode, that would put on some risk for COVID-19. So the university have a regulation saying if people with more than 120 or less than 120, that would be making this big risk. So that's why we put it lectures. But for the tutorials in the future, if it is less than 40 students, and we can put it offline. We can put it offline. You understand, right? So according to the current university regulations, we have to put under online Zooms. But I personally prefer the either hybrid or the face-to-face lectures because that we can have more interactions. But now is the whole world is flooding by this COVID-19, so we have no choice for that. Thanks for your kind understanding. And I would like you to take care. Oh, some students ask about this assessment of the course. Assessment, of course, is set in course syllabus that we would have, you know, if you go to our syllabus, you can easily find that we would have 50% in class test. And then group term essay and group presentation participation 30%. So that is assessment. So the first part is class test, second part is group coursework, which include firstly is term essay, and second part is a group presentation participation. So your presentation of this lectures and tutorials are considered very important part of the assessment. So I'm not quite sure you understand this. Thank you. So I want to meet you later in the tutorial rooms. Later, I understand some students already formed your group. So later, we can discuss the further for the groups formation and the topics assignment. Okay, that's all for today's lecture. Thank you so much. See you later in the tutorial room. Bye.